Tomb Raider might be adapted from a game we know and love, but that doesn't mean we weren't left scratching our heads over a few key plot points. Here are the 8 biggest WTF questions we had after watching the much anticipated new adventure for Lara Croft. The big plot twist in Tomb Raider hinges around the reveal that Lara's father Richard is actually still alive on Yamatai, despite Matthias Vogel saying he killed him. But wouldn't Matthias be the first person to know Richard didn't die? Or wouldn't he at least have checked to make sure this person who solely could help him find Himiko's tomb is really dead? This plot hole easily could have been explained with one line of dialogue, for example saying Richard fell off a cliff. Clearly the villain should have checked a little bit closer to be sure. The best answer we could find was maybe? While most viruses don't live longer than a matter of days on a corpse, there are some exceptions. Smallpox can stay contagious past death, though there are no real-world examples of it lasting as long as Himiko's death-bringing disease did. But that doesn't mean finding centuries-old disease on well-preserved dead bodies isn't a real-life concern. U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease virologist Peter Jarling said in a 2014 report for science journal Nature that it's plausible to imagine that viruses might exist in mummies in cold crypts. So, maybe? That doesn't change the fact that it makes absolutely zero scientifically plausible sense that the disease would turn people into zombies. It also doesn't make a lot of narrative sense considering the entire concept of tweaking the game's supernatural version of Himiko into a more realistically grounded version of the character. Why do away with the magical aspect if you're going to just be introducing zombies into the mix? The premise of Lara and Luren's need to take the Endurance to Yamatai is because Himiko supposedly was creating a storm that made it impossible to come to or leave the island. But when the end of the movie resolves with Himiko not having any supernatural abilities, this logic doesn't quite track. The Trinity helicopter seemingly arrived on Yamatai with little to no difficulty, which leads us to the question, why didn't Lara just get one herself instead of a boat? Matthias repeatedly complains that after Richard quote-unquote died, he didn't have anyone to talk to on Yamatai. He often acts like he hasn't really spoken to anyone on the island for close to 7 years, but he's surrounded by dozens of people. Both his men and those he's made slaves, and many of them are English speakers. He could have solved this problem by talking to literally any of them. Lara smashes through treetops in a parachute, she slams into rusted metal, she's punched, kicked, slammed to the floor by 10-foot waves, slammed into rocks by men twice her size, thrown down rapids, she crashes her bike into a police car, but all she gets is a bunch of bruises and granted a very serious wound from her parachute crash. We call BS. Hong Kong is one of the most metropolitan modern cities in the world. It's a business capital, it's a tech hub, it's modern, it has poverty, absolutely, but the movie portrays a city filled only with people down on their luck, wizened and toothless, who don't speak English unless it's to pickpocket you. The fact that every Hong Kong character or extra is portrayed as having a dirty face during the city's brief appearance in the movie is a frustrating misrepresentation of that city's culture in real life. The twist at the end of Tomb Raider is that Trinity had been operating from within Croft-owned companies the entire time. How the heck could Richard, in all his extensive research, never have realized that this world-threatening organization, and specifically his closest employee, Anna Miller, was behind this? The logic doesn't track unless we assume that Richard was a pretty crummy investigator or an incredible absent company executive, which would make sense considering how much time he spent adventuring. Those are our biggest WTF questions after watching Tomb Raider. What are yours? For more of our WTF questions from the biggest blockbusters, make sure to check out Black Panther's 8 biggest WTF questions and Star Wars The Last Jedi's 6 biggest WTF questions. And for all things movies, confusing or otherwise, be sure to like and subscribe to IGN on all your favorite platforms.